And we're back with another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from the ISFF. Of course, that's ISFF right there for you. Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Truly appreciate you joining us. Inside Sports Fantasy Football, where we cover the best in fantasy football each and every year. And it wouldn't be Inside Fantasy Football as far as Inside Sports Fantasy Football without a good friend. Indeed, it is the guy who has been a mainstay for ISFF. In fact, the guy who brought over the Inside Sports name to us right here, it is Chris Lardieri. Chris, great to have you back. Great to conclude a wonderful season in the NFL.
Yeah, another great season. Happy New Year, Gerald. Just an interesting fantasy season to say the least. I think going in, we thought there were a lot of guys that were no brainers, and when you look at the results, everyone wanted to stay away from one kid, Christian McCaffrey, and you end up being not only the best player in fantasy, but having one of the best fantasy seasons for a running back ever.
Absolutely. Again, very blessed to have made the playoffs in all my leagues. Like you've told me that I was able to finish in the playoffs once again. Didn't win our money league, but did finish third. So I'm very happy with that result because I struggled most of the season to even field a team and a lineup for most of the season in that league. It was probably one of the hardest teams that I've had to manage and navigate through for an entire season in probably a decade for me on that one. I will say for the other leagues, it was so funny because again, the teams that I was dominant with double digit victories, usually got bounced out in almost all my leagues in the first round. But it was the two teams that were 7-6 that made it all the way to the championship game and won. So I won two titles of my I just recounted it was six teams this year, and two of them won titles for me. So I feel very fortunate. But again, I know you finished in the playoffs as well in your leagues and one of your leagues. So tell us what worked with you in those leagues. For me, it was just about getting healthy at the right time.
Absolutely. In the league we play in together, we started off strong, lost a number of guys for the year, including Malik Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo. We're fortunate enough there were still some viable options out on waivers, and we got Matt Stafford at the right time as he peaked and made a potential run at NFL MVP. In the other league, we had Jameer Gibbs, who had a phenomenal year, and Josh Allen, who really put up some nice numbers at times, but was very streaky. So we made it in that league, lost in the semis, finished fourth place out of 12 in our first year in this league. But yeah, to tell you the truth, I we had a streak going in our league, Gerald, and we didn't make the playoffs, missed by one game, and yet again you finished in the money. So congrats to you. But fantasy football is definitely a marathon. You have to pay attention to waivers, and I think most importantly, at the beginning of your season, you got guys on the bench that might not be producing. Hold on to them; they might be starters when you need them late in the year.
Absolutely. And also, if you stream those kickers and the defense, you got to pay attention. You got to keep your eye on those matchups later in the season because a couple points here on a kicker or a couple points that you gain on a defense could make all the difference in some of these close games. So absolutely, indeed. And like I said, in the teams that I didn't do overall so well in the regular season, but wound up winning, it was all about getting players healthy at the right time. And like you said, players who didn't contribute in the first part of the season were able to contribute when it mattered the most.
Definitely. And you look at a guy like Devontae Adams, for instance. I know he got hurt late in the year, but a guy like that going into the draft, a lot of people are like, well, he might be washed up. He didn't do anything. Well, he was on the Jets last year, and Aaron Rodgers had a horrible year. You put him in the right offense with a likely future Hall of Famer quarterback, good things are going to happen. Then on the flip side, there was just so much upside and hype, and people thought Joe Burrow was going to be a phenomenal fantasy quarterback this year. Fluke injury early in the season with his toe, of all things. He shot for most of the year. By the time he comes back, had a couple good games, had some true duds, and You really can't rely on him. So you just never know. I think you just got to be so active, not only in waivers, but with your bench management and wherever possible, trading. And to your point about teams that kind of start slow and pick up, once you get past that trade deadline, there's not a heck of a lot on waivers. So you almost have to have your lineup established and a deep bench if you're going to make any sort of a run.
I asked you recently about Christian McCaffrey. Again, by far and away, the leading point getter in fantasy football. Once again, health is always the key, but we've seen Christian McCaffrey, who was the dominant player. Was it 2 seasons ago? Uh, Last season found a lot of trouble because of his injury status and just could not stay on the field, and led to a absolutely a miserable season. Was one of the biggest disappointments of the past season. This season now, he has found the mojo once again, and a guy who was actually, like I said before, second or third rounds. I saw him in some rounds being picked, found success to the point where he was the dominant number one player in fantasy football. Should he regain his hierarchy as the number one player in the fantasy football pantheon once again?
I think he has to. I know in one of our preseason shows, we advocated if you're late in the first round and there's a run on running backs, maybe it's worth taking a flyer on McCaffrey because on the back end in round two, you've still got a pretty high pick if you want to go receiver or quarterback. And he exceeded even my wildest expectations. Again, the caveat is as long as he stays healthy, he is an elite fantasy football player. But you just don't know from year to year what's going to happen with him. So either you have to handcuff him or have that running back depth. But when he plays, he's going to put up points. And I think going into next year, he's got to be the consensus number one.
Once again, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football with Chris Lardieri. It's me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for listening. If you have a question over the many weeks of the long layoff between fantasy football leagues before your fantasy football draft, go ahead and hit us up. isfantasyfootball at yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. We talked a little bit before about Puka Nakua and his very interesting season, the dominant receiver out there, but also off the field, a lot of issues as well. As far as him, where he stands going forward, he's still a very young player. He has the chance, after starting his rookie year off amazing and following it up with an even better second year campaign, barring any health issues, he has the ability to become one of the greatest receivers of all time.
He does. He's an elite fantasy football receiver. And as long as Matthew Stafford's there, I don't see it changing. And even if something were to happen with Stafford, if he surprisingly walks away and suffers an injury. Just being in that Sean McVay offense, he'll get a quarterback he wants in there and good things happen. I mean, he turned around Jared Goff once upon a time. He resurrected Stafford's career. So I think the future's bright for Puka.
Bijan Robinson was somebody that you point out. He was the second running back in most leagues as far as the point system, as far as how well they did over the course of the season. Had a tremendous season for him with the new regime coming in because they cleaned house on, well, I was it Black Monday or was it Tuesday that they
It was,
hired?
yeah, it was. I want to say Sunday night they did it. They were the first
Okay.
ones.
Well, they
Yeah,
were the
they
first
they
ones.
jumped Black Monday even.
Well, okay. Well, in that case, it's really dark Sunday if that's the case. And if that's the case, do you see him still prospering because of the fact you're getting a new regime with some changes? Obviously, going to have to go ahead and upgrade the quarterback and figure that out long term. They do have skill with Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, who had the best game ever from a tight end ever, to the best of my knowledge, as far as a fantasy football perspective, in one game this season. They have those skilled positions, but they need someone to throw the ball to them. Do you see a hit to Bijan Robinson, or should you still stick with them at the top of your fantasy football draft?
I would stick with him. I think the Falcons' job is going to be an interesting one, especially for some of these recently fired head coaches like John Harbaugh or Kevin Stefanski, for instance, or maybe even a young offensive minded coordinator type. He's young. He's got a ton of upside. If it weren't for McCaffrey, I think maybe he would be the number one running back this past season. But I got to be honest with you, looking at what Saquon did last year and then McCaffrey this year, if I've got the first pick, and this is just me, I believe in mean reversion, age, wear and tear on running backs. I'd like to think that Bijan's got more upside than a McCaffrey would, and I don't think there's anything wrong with considering him to be first. We also had Jameer Gibbs in one of our leagues. He had a phenomenal year. I think that's another running back that's got a bright future as well. And I don't think you can go wrong with either. But yeah, I think whoever takes that Atlanta job is really going to have a lot of tools at his disposal, and Robinson being at the top of that list.
Do you see Atlanta possibly making a trade of one of those skilled players in order to facilitate more depth on their roster?
At this point, I would hold on to those guys. Their previous GM liked like making some bad trades and questionable moves, and the Rams now inherited the Falcons' pretty high first round pick this coming draft. But if anyone, I would guess Kirk Cousins would be the one you want to trade. He played pretty well down the stretches. They had a nice run, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams looking for a veteran quarterback, whether it be to start or have a depth as a backup. So I think that's where your trade idea would probably come into play. They don't have the draft capital this year to trade back.
Speaking of quarterbacks, the year was not as great as it has been in recent years for quarterbacks, as far as the number of quarterbacks, just really with eye popping numbers per se. Yes, of course, Josh Allen was still number one, but he was usually number one overall or right there at that limit the past 2, 3 seasons. This year, he fell down just a little bit, even though, again, he was the number one. But when it comes to the quarterback position, Matthew Stafford, again, lit up the world in the first half of the season, kind of slid off a little bit in the second half, as well as the Rams did as well. Trevor Lawrence finally blossomed into a top five, top 10 quarterback per se. But with Drake May, when Drake May is the number two quarterback in fantasy football as far as overall this season, does that say more about him or more about the position at this point in time?
I think a little of both. He really had a phenomenal year. Was the beneficiary of an extremely weak schedule, and that's not his doing or choice.
Mhm.
But Mike Vrabel really turned that team around, and Josh McDaniels, look, the guy's a terrible head coach, but you've got to give him his props for how he is as an offensive coordinator. And Drake May was the beneficiary. I do think having Josh Allen on one of my teams and looking at other teams that had Jalen Hurts or Mahomes or whatever the case is, you name the overhyped quarterback. Lamar Jackson, for instance, was a real disappointment this year. Maybe we start rethinking of, yeah, I mean, you should take a quarterback pretty high, especially if he's elite. There will be another Drake May next year. I don't know who it will be, but last year it was Jaden Daniels, for instance. Even someone like Daniel Jones before he got hurt put up some nice numbers, changing teams and going to the Colts. So, like I said, we got Matthew Stafford on waivers, maybe towards the midway point of the season. So, maybe you build your team and worry about quarterbacks later.
I would just again that goes against what I usually do, but I'm now considering that for what I need to do in my draft coming up later this year because when Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams make up three of the first five point getters in fantasy football, that is a concern I have as far as because all three have had okay, this is their year. This was their blossom year, and I don't know if it's going to be consistent for any of them going forward. I have trepidations about selecting them high in my draft. So now I have to possibly, for the first time in a long time, readjust my thinking about how I want to select quarterbacks moving forward.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you bring up those three. Those are great examples. In all three cases, a change in coaching staff benefited them all. So maybe it's not just, oh, we take this quarterback 'cause he's a star and he's always done good. Maybe there's some sort of value to be added from a top down level, saying, hey, Caleb Williams struggled under terrible coaching. Ben Johnson, who's clearly a quarterback whisperer, comes in and there's upside there. So maybe we just don't look at numbers and projections and all that and say, all right, let's say, for instance, whoever the Falcons hire is an offensive guru and Penix comes back healthy. Maybe he'll benefit from that next year, for example.
That's a good point, and especially with what he'll have there, possibly with that type of skilled lineup as far as London, Robinson, and Pitts. It will probably be a better season, hopefully, for Phoenix, unless they decide to go into a different direction in Atlanta. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, very interesting overall as far as how this fantasy football season played out. Again, it wasn't always by the norm. You had to go ahead and adjust on the fly. And I think in order to have a successful season, you had to make several adjustments. In fact, look at the when you look at the stats as far as how many a percentage of starting, we actually have in the top 10 players like Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, and others. Caleb Williams for Caleb Williams is a top just out of a outside of a top 10 player, but he was actually only started less than half the time.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And I think too that's just a function of teams probably had the Mahomes of the world and just played him week after week, even though he was in decline. And maybe they had a Williams on the bench that they drafted early and never used him. It's kind of a head scratcher to me. I mean, uh, at quarterback, you always play the hot hand, and I just don't get even at that point. Are you just not watching the games, or you're only looking at stats and listening to so-called experts? I mean, I didn't watch a ton of the Bears this year, but when I did, Williams looked like a different quarterback and looked like he was improving with each week. So who knows? Maybe someone out there, one of these so-called experts, will write a story because of Drake May and Caleb Williams that next year you need to go draft yourself a second-year quarterback. So Tyler Shuck's the answer. But I kind of joke, but in all seriousness, Tyler Shuck had a nice little run down the stretch, and Kellen Moore is an excellent coach when it comes to quarterbacks. So maybe that is a guy you keep up on.
We'll see what happens, my friend. But again, it was a different year for fantasy football, but hopefully you were able to adjust with it. Hopefully your teams did well out there, and hopefully you had a chance to check out our shows to get the best advice on fantasy football as far as scoring and exactly just which teams were able to go ahead and which players were able to go ahead and excel this fantasy football season. But the real season is still got a lot of mileage left because the playoffs are around the corner, and I wanted to make sure we got in a good show for you guys as far as our thoughts on the playoffs upcoming. Again, we could always adjust on the fly, and we'll definitely be back for the Super Bowl and our Super Bowl pick. But for now, my friend, it is the NFL playoffs. So with that, the schedule starts with the wild card. And this is my yearly. I cannot believe a team that's 8-9 made the playoffs. But okay, all right, they made the playoffs, Chris. But how in the heck do the Panthers deserve hosting a game against the LA Rams this Saturday?
Because the NFL is so set in their ways, they will never reseed. Even last year, the Lions kind of got screwed having to play the Commanders in the second round. They won't reseed within the playoffs. Who knows? I just don't see why a team that wins a division with a subpar record should have a home game, and the Rams, who had a much better record, have to go to Charlotte to play the Panthers. It's one of the things that drives me nuts about the league. I don't think in this particular case it will matter. I think the Rams will get revenge and win at Carolina. But if the Panthers played in a cold weather climate and there were some nasty conditions forecast, I think the Rams would be banging the drum for reseeding as well.
And I want to apologize to you, my friend, because your ears have to hear this rant every single year we do this because I've just gone. It was what Tampa Bay before and other. It
Mhm.
always seems to come out of that that division per se as far as that's concerned. But there's always a 8-8 in this case now with a 17 game. It's either a 9-8 or an 8-9 team that hosts just because they won their division against a superior 10-5, 10-7, or in this case, what, 11, 12 win team. It doesn't matter. It just, again, I don't mind rewarding division teams, division winners per se, Chris, about getting to the playoffs. That's fine. But just because you won a division does not mean you should deserve playing a home game against a team with a much better record and a much better outcome than you had in the season. You guys, they all play virtually the same teams. They don't have quite the same records per se. It's usually easier for some and sometimes a little harder for it, but they still all play in the same league, and it just seems baffling to me why the NFL can't adjust.
I don't get it, and I never will. And until the owners grow a set or the competition committee or whoever determines this nonsense, nothing's going to change. And that's why I've given up complaining about it. But I don't fault you for doing it every year because it's BS.
Again, I don't know if anybody will actually hear me, but it would be nice if they did, so I could go ahead and say I helped initiate this as far as fight against the insanity as far as that's concerned. Because again, if you're trying to explain the game, if you're trying to teach the game to someone, whether it's NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, what have you, and you tell them that, well, in certain occasions, because the NFL is not the only one, this team with a worse record gets the home court, home field advantage over the other. That to me just it's just so hard to go ahead and tell you the sport is so great, and then oh, by the way, you got this. It just makes you want to scratch your head. So again, that was my rant for the year on that. Again, Chris, you're still patient, man. I just, again, every year you have to hear this, but I will say again, it is the playoffs coming up. Again, it starts off with the Carolina Panthers hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Now, you said you have leaned into the Rams as far as that's concerned. They are, like you said, the big favorites, 10.5, a 10.5 spread. And we're not going to the doghouse yet, but a 10.5 spread tells you all you need to know. It is by far and away the biggest spread of this weekend on Wild Card Weekend for the NFL.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones I can remember in quite some time. The Panthers backed into the playoffs, lost to the Buccaneers, and then needed the Falcons, who, by the way, stabbed the Bucks in the heart twice down the stretch, beating them in Tampa, the Kyle Pitts game, and then beating the Saints in some odd sort of tiebreaker that benefited the Panthers. So yeah, nice story that the Panthers turned it around, especially since yours truly had a wager on them in Vegas to win the division. And that's great and all, but it almost felt like dirty money because it was just so ugly. And backing in like that, I just don't see any upside. Yeah, they beat the Rams once this year, but I do not see a Sean McVay coach team letting that happen a second time.
So there we have it for that game as far as the first game on the wild card schedule. Upcoming after that on Saturday, the evening game will be the Packers, the Bears. Now, again, they've had some real barn burners this season, Packers and Bears, because they play each other twice every season. So this is not a surprise as far as it's concerned. And of course, the point spread is a flat one. It's not a half point, everyone. It's a flat one right now. As far as it's concerned, the Green Bay Packers get a slight edge over Chicago, even though it's at Chicago. We can't even say Soldier Field anymore. Again, whatever you want to call it at this point in Chicago. I saw it the other day. Just looking at it, it just made me nostalgic for Soldier Field gone by, as far as what it once was. But again, it's a fancy Dan new stadium in Chicago. So that being said, my friend, what are your thoughts on this game? Because I imagine it's going to be very cold in Chicago.
Absolutely. And I know Jordan Love's coming back, coming off a concussion he suffered in that second Bears game, the barn burner that went down to the wire. Yeah, I mean, no one can lose this game. So that 1 point spread is basically a pick 'em because someone's got to win the game by at least a point. Normally, I'd lean towards the Packers just because I thought Love was having a nice season, but they've clearly sputtered down the stretch, big part due to Love's injury. And I like the way the Bears are playing, even though they struggled against the Lions. They're going to be at home. They've already beaten the Packers once. Would not be surprised if the Bears win this game. Kind of a head scratcher that they're the ones getting the point at home, but I will never be able to figure out what Vegas thinks or does.
Well, you're going to be saying the same thing here in a second when we cover the Bills and Jags. But before we go into, is it something that's going to lead into that? Because the Bears, the Jaguars, and the Patriots, like we talked about with their quarterbacks being just brand new to the fantasy football hierarchy, and when we go into our surprises and disappointments, I guess they're probably the biggest surprises of anything in fantasy football. I want to go ahead and hear your thoughts on this. Those are all three inexperienced quarterbacks facing experienced competition. Your thoughts on this, my friend? I mean, now are the money games. So, do you expect one, both, or all of these quarterbacks to produce or to falter when it matters the most in the NFL playoffs?
I think they'll all produce this week. There's one asterisk. Trevor Lawrence beat the Chargers a few years ago at home in a great comeback game, and then nearly beat the Chiefs on the road in round two. So got a little more confidence in him. I feel
Mm.
like the Jags have got this. No one believes in us chip on their shoulder. They went into Denver late in the year and won there. So I got some faith in Trevor Lawrence. I think Liam Cohen's a big part of that. For May, I just like the way he's playing. I know the Chargers have a good defense, and Harbaugh will scheme against him, but yeah, I happen to think the way he's playing right now, they're going to be tough to beat at home. And I just like the way Williams has been playing, so I'm going to roll the dice on all three of those QBs. You look at what Jaden Daniels did last year as a rookie; anything is possible.
So funny. This time last year, our friend Joe Soro, oh, Caleb Williams just not, yeah, just not going to cut it. Just not going to cut it. Not that guy. It's like, oh, by the way, Joe, remember what you're saying about Caleb Williams? He always quickly moves the subject and changes the subject when that comes up because he doesn't like to be proven wrong. So I'll just leave it at that with the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. But again, I just don't think he liked it when he cried when he left that USC that game where he cried at the end of his USC career. But um, we'll see. We'll see what Caleb Williams is made of. I think of any of the three quarterbacks, I would say Williams is the one I would be questioning the most. Not to agree with Joe to an extent, but I just think that this is going to be a very interesting game because the Packers, like you said, with Love coming in there, may get the momentum early. And the thing is, will the Bears, who have found themselves fighting from behind in a few games this year, will they manage to go ahead and actually start off well and maintain that over four quarters against a good Packers team?
Yeah, it'd be smart if they did that, but on the flip side, they're the comeback kids this year, so no lead is safe around them. And you got to really hand it to Ben Johnson. He's done a phenomenal job turning that team around. And on the flip side, we clearly saw how much the Lions offense missed him this season.
Next game is going to be the Bills and Jaguars on Sunday. It's the early game, the first of three, just to let everybody know. But yes, it's the Bills and Jaguars in cold, snowy Jacksonville. So with that, though, again, the Jaguars, like you said, Lawrence has some playoff experience and now has found consistency. Everybody's been waiting for that consistency to come. Well, it came this year and then some. He's had a great season. The Jaguars have I finally filled out a lot of that promise. I think that that a lot of people have been expecting them. They host the Bills and Josh Allen. Your thoughts on the Bills and Jags? I see this as a very competitive game, and since they're not going to be wallowing in snow in Buffalo, this could be a high-scoring game in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it really could. And I just don't like the way the Bills have been playing. Again, we hit on this earlier. Josh Allen just doesn't seem to have the weapons he's had in the past. And I think this is a Jaguar team. Not saying they can make a Super Bowl run, but people are sleeping on them. They could be dangerous and potentially win a couple games here. And I'm leaning towards the Jags on this one. I think the Bills' window of opportunity is closing, and that's become evident here in the last month of the season.
So we'll see what happens with that one. And the next game that is on the list at the 1:30 mark for Sunday for Pacific time for us here is the 49ers and the Eagles. Now, this one also is a good one. The thing is, though, Brock Purdy, I think this game relies on Brock Purdy versus Jalen Hurts, who both have had their ups and downs. And I repeat, ups and downs this season, whether it's health related or just on the field related. But Brock Purdy comes in really hot, and Jalen Hurts, after being much maligned about halfway through the season and leaning into the back half, found his stroke, so to speak, in the last couple of games. How important was it for Jalen Hurts to find that confidence once again as the 49ers come in to try to knock off the champs?
Super important, and we saw it last year, middle of the season. Everyone in Philadelphia was calling for his and Sirianni's head, and he peaks at the right time, and the Eagles go on a run, and Hurts wins his first Super Bowl. So I think that's a good sign for the Eagles fans. And the Niners, who were a win away from being the number one seed, now have to go on the road and play Philly. A ton of injuries. Trent Williams supposedly coming back. That was a big loss last week against the Seahawks. So they're going to need anyone and everyone because this Eagles defense, when they're on, is tough.
And it'll be interesting. And I'll just leave it at that to see how this one matches up because, again, Brock Purdy, since he came back from his latest injury, has been really, really good. And with Christian McCaffrey playing better than anyone in the league as far as from the running back position, it could be very interesting. The thing is, will they get the support from the receiver set? And that's what I want to know is because the receivers have, as you know, with Ayuk and what's gone on as far as injuries with Pearsall over the course of the season, how that worked itself out. I think Pearsall's come back to the lineup and whatnot. Will Brock Purdy be able to stay upright and stay healthy and be able to provide a good challenge for the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend?
That's the key right there. If he can't get going, the 49ers are done. When he's on, Purdy's looked really good this year. If not, I think they're going to struggle. And sounds simplistic, but we saw it last Saturday night. Not only did the Seahawks scheme and just say McCaffrey's not going to beat us, we dare you, Purdy. He didn't have his weapons. 3 points, the team looked anemic.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays itself out. Again, the Chargers and the Patriots will finish up Sunday night. A good Sunday of football. My gosh, back to back to back. Really good matchups. Sunday, again, I've told you I have no allegiance towards any NFL team. Sorry, Raiders. But as an NFL fan, as someone who is a casual observer, as someone who obviously observes it quite a bit for the fantasy football reason, I'm excited and pumped up for what's coming on Sunday because it finishes off against the Los Angeles Chargers heading into New England, which could be another cold game against the New England Patriots and one of the biggest surprises in the league in Drake May and the New England Patriots. And that big turnaround, sorry, Bill. Unfortunately, they're winning, and they're winning without you as the Chargers headed to see New England to finish off Wild Card Weekend before we get into Wild Card Monday.
Yeah, I think that should be an excellent game, especially in the cold on Sunday evening. I just look, Justin Herbert's been banged up, but this Chargers team is resilient. Harbaugh is going to find a way to devise up something to stop Drake May or contain him. So I think this could be a really close, interesting game. While I'm leaning towards the Patriots having the home field and given the way May's been playing, I think on paper it's a great coaching matchup between Harbaugh and Vrabel.
And you talked about earlier Aaron Rodgers and this what could be or might be his final game as an NFL player. He's not had the greatest seasons, but he has guided the Pittsburgh Steelers to a wild card game at home against Houston, who comes in here red hot. 9 in a row? Is it 9 in a row? Am
Yeah,
I?
something like that, I believe.
Yeah, and the 9 row heading in. I really like. I'm going to tell you this. Okay, I'm not a Houston Texan fan, but I really like the all red uniforms when they go to it. I'm just letting you know. I just think it's cool when they do, especially with the shoes, when they top it off with the red shoes and it's just all red. I just think it's super cool. But anyways, getting back to it, Houston is at Pittsburgh. Houston is a 3-point favorite on the road at Pittsburgh. And again, we could be seeing the end of Aaron Rodgers against a sizzling hot Houston team.
Yeah, I like your taste and style too, Gerald. The red uniforms are a nice look.
It's it.
Um,
I mean, I saw it like about a couple weeks back, and I was like, "Dang, that looks." It pops on my screen. If it pops on my big screen, yeah, that's what does it for me.
yeah, and I like the way the Texans are playing too. They kind of fell a game short because of the role the Jaguars have been on, but I like the way they play defense, and I feel like CJ Stroud's coming around. Normally, not to give a hint at the doghouse, but 3.5, 3-point home dog with Pittsburgh, I'd be all over it. But frankly, watching that Sunday night game, the Ravens really between a coaching mistake, not trying to gain some more yardage, and the poor kicker shanking the field goal. I don't think the Steelers should even be here right now. Didn't like the way their defense played. Lamar carved them up in the second half, especially the fourth quarter. And I just think even though they got to go on the road, I think the Texans have a lot of momentum. And while it's a nice story that Rodgers temporarily revitalized his career, I think this could be the end of the line for him, like you said, potentially for his career as well.
John Harbaugh would have a tendency to agree with you on this said statement too, Chris. Now that
Yeah.
he's found himself, that was the most surprising of the firings, I think, in my opinion. Man, 18 years after 18 years, I believe he was let go. But I don't think he'll lack for a job if he wants it out there. So it'd be interesting to see where he lands. But yes, that is the finish off for wild card weekend. But before we get to our disappointments, our stars, our MVP, what have you, as far as finishing up the fantasy football end of it, but I wanted to go ahead over the odds for the Super Bowl, and also, of course, woof woof woof, heading to the doghouse. So before we head over to your Super Bowl pick, as of now, which will be subject to change if needed before we do our Super Bowl preview, I want to hit you up on the doghouse. So we head out one more time to the doghouse. It's a new year. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Happy New Year to you, Chris. And your dog is looking at you out there, looking at you, saying, "Can you please pay some attention? You celebrated the entire Christmas holiday and the New Year's holiday, and you forgot about me." But you head out, you finally give it some love, you give it a bone, you give it some water, and you head back into the doghouse. So who do you have, woof woof woof, in your doghouse this wild card weekend?
Yeah, it's not a big fan of these lines. If the I do like the home dogs in terms of Chicago and Jacksonville, but there's really no value there. But I do think either of those teams are probably worth you a money line wager. Doesn't pay out a ton, but I just think those teams are going to win. I'm going to go with the 49ers. That line moved from like 3.5 opening to 5.5. A lot of money came in on the Eagles. While I'm not entirely sure if the 49ers will pull it out for selfish reasons, I hope they will. But I think they can keep this game close, and maybe they lose a 28-24 type game. You cover the spread, everyone's happy. So take the 5.5 with the 49ers. I think they will at least bounce back offensively this week.
I like that, Keller. I cannot say, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but the Carolina Panthers, I am, that 10.5 spread is just so that Vegas is okay. Here in Vegas, that's a mouth watering line. I'll just
Hmm.
say that when the home dog in a playoff is 10.5 under, as far as they're concerned, I just can't resist it, man. I know I'm going to pay for it, but I just can't resist. I'm going to go with the Panthers, my friend, at 10.5. I don't ask me why, other than it's just the spread. It's just too enticing because the Rams on the road, they do have enough weapons. They get their minds right. They didn't play their best football at the end of the season. They're still a much superior team than Carolina. I still think they're going to win the game, but I think Carolina's going to sneak in under that 10.5.
I got to tell you, Gerald, it was tempting. I just don't see the Panthers repeating what they did earlier this season. But yeah, that's just too many points for a home dog, especially that hook there. I mean, Can the Panthers stay within 10? I think it's entirely possible.
If they keep it low scoring, I think that definitely they can do that. They got to keep it under 17. If they keep the Rams under 17, they can beat the spread. I don't think they'll win the game. I'm not asking anybody out there to say, "Hey, what's up?" No, I'm not saying they'll win the game, but if it may be like one of those ugly 13-3 games. That's what I'll say on that one. That just barely beats under the wire on that, but we'll leave it at that. But once again, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It is Gerald Glassford along with Chris Lardieri. But before we head on out, a couple quick things as far as Super Bowl and our fantasy football is concerned. All right, Chris, here's the latest odds. Speaking of odds, because again, we do this for entertainment purposes only, everyone out there. So please don't add us and please don't sue us because, again, that would not be in your wise investment if that's the case. You want to bet? You're an adult. Do what you need to do. But we're just giving entertainment picks only here. But the Super Bowl odds, as posted by Fox Sports, has Seahawks as the favorite for the Super Bowl, the Rams, then the Broncos, Patriots, Eagles, Bills. Bills are at plus 1,000. Everybody under that is under 1,000. So Texans are at 1,200. Jaguars at plus 1,300. Packers at 2,500. Bears are at 2,500. 49ers are at 3,000. Chargers at 3,000. That's also surprising to me. 49ers and Chargers. Steelers at 5,000 and the Panthers at 20,000. So with that, my friend, yeah, $10 bet would win $2,000. By the way, just to let everyone know.
Not
With
bad.
them, who is your favorite, and is there a surprise among that list you might think might sneak up on some people?
Yeah, so I've got two tickets that are still alive, a Bills 49ers Super Bowl. I was a little more optimistic a few weeks back. I don't think that's happening. I don't think either team's making it. So, for full disclosure, I'll say that was my initial pick back in September. I've got to modify it now, given the certain circumstances and what's going on. I'm going to go with the Rams in the NFC because that was a team I probably was leaning towards betting on until I believed all the gibberish and smokescreen that Matthew Stafford was finished and he was hurt and he might not start the season. Hindsight, I probably should have bet on the Rams. So I'll say I'll try and make up for that, pick them now. And then coming out of the AFC, don't necessarily think they're the best team in the AFC, but they've got home field. They've got one of the best coaches in football. It's going to be hard to win there. They win it with a running game and defense, like my beloved old 1980s Giants style football. I think the Broncos can go from the AFC, but since you're putting a gun to my head in terms of a surprise, I mentioned this at the beginning of our season. I'll say the Houston Texans if you want to take a long shot bet. This is a team that could get on a roll. I don't think they'd be intimidated by being on the road. And maybe that's a team that could sneak into the Super Bowl. So we'll see.
And they are the hottest team in the NFL, as we just mentioned. So, and they're a plus 1,200. So, be a nice bet if you go ahead and just bet $10 on that. But again, entertainment purposes only. Uh, for my favorite, I am going to go with the Seahawks. I think that the Seahawks are riding a lot of momentum right now. I think they found luck when they needed to, and I think they have all the mojo right now that they need in the AFC. A little bit over the Broncos, although the Broncos, like you said, have really had a really strong season as well. And I would not be surprised with them. I would probably say in the NFC, I am going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go a little bit different, and I'm going to go with I don't want to say the returning Eagles because I think there's going to be issues, but I think I think I'm going to go with a long shot, my friend. I think I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. That is a long shot, but I think Brock Purdy finally might find the rhythm. He started feeling it at the end, 5 touchdown game included, and he might feel it as far as it's concerned. So I'm picking a long shot in the NFC because I think it's up for grabs. I truly think the NFC is a anyone's game type of deal. And look out for the Chargers, my friend. They're also plus 3,000. I would not sleep on them as a long shot. And if you want to put some extra money on them, again, for entertainment purposes only, it might not be a bad investment.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And if the Chargers do get past the Patriots here in the first round, I think they could get on a roll. So that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
I just don't know why they're 3,000. And then again, there are teams which I have questions on. The Bills at 1,000. I don't know. I'm just not sold on the Bills this year for some reason. Just seem a little bit off for me. But again, we'll find out starting this weekend. But yes, some great thoughts and great picks right there from Chris Lardieri. Truly appreciate you doing so. But before we head on out, my friend, I want to hear your thoughts on the highs and lows for the fantasy football season, because that's what we do here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. I'm assuming your MVP is Christian McCaffrey, or could it be someone like Bijan Robinson or Puka Nakua?
Yeah, I think you got to give it to McCaffrey, Nakua, a close second. I'd like to give kind of an unsung player, who probably could have been an MVP in most normal years if it weren't for McCaffrey and Puka. But JSM with the Seahawks and Sam Darnold, who a lot of people question that move, signing him. I thought it was going to be a pretty solid move. I never thought it'd work out this well, but think about it. They traded Geno Smith to the Raiders for a third round pick and signed Darnold and ended up with the 1 seed. Now, it remains to be seen if he can get them to the promised land, but that is what I call an excellent transaction by John Schneider, and fantasy football paid off as well. JSN's got a ton of upside, led the league in receiving yards. I think the future is very bright for him.
Absolutely, as do I, and he is one of the main reasons why I'm looking at Seattle as my favorite, but it's close. Again, I don't see any dominant team. That's what I'm like about heading into. I'm excited as an NFL fan because it looks like it's going to be open game for all but two or three of these teams in the NFL playoffs this year. Because I don't have a definitive favorite, and I'm not sure if you do either.
I don't. I do not. And I think it's wide open. And I think, yeah, the Eagles are still hanging around, but it's kind of nice the Chiefs aren't in it. We'll see a different team from the AFC at Levi Stadium.
Absolutely. I know they're all brokenhearted in Kansas City, but gosh, I mean, your run, it will always be remembered, but every run must end, and it did end this year for Kansas City. But before we head on out, speaking of Kansas City, do you have any true disappointments? Because for me, while you could easily go that low hanging fruit and go with Mahomes, who did not have the greatest of seasons, I'm going to go with Jamar Chase, the undisputed number one guy, number one pick in the draft, everybody's favorite, and just did not get it done. Got upset because the ball was just not being passed to him. His quarterback got injured. Everything that went wrong for him outside of his own health did go wrong this year in Cincinnati. Kind of made up for a little bit at the end, but still, when you're 103 points behind the overall leader in fantasy football, you cannot say it was a great year for the number one draft pick in many fantasy football drafts this year.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I'll asterisk that by saying Burrow's injury completely
Well, that yeah,
ruined his
I threw
fantasy
that in.
prospects, right?
Yeah.
Like so, did he have if he has Burrow, does he have his huge year? Maybe, maybe not, but I think that goes into what the theme was of the 2025 fantasy football season is that injuries, it just felt like there were more injuries. Maybe statistically they weren't, but I felt like to key players, franchise players, guys you rely on week after week. I felt like they were dropping at flies there for a stretch. And Joe Burrow probably at or near the top of that list. So uh, definitely affected Chase, affected Justin Jefferson too, with all the revolving quarterbacks in Minnesota. I think for me, my biggest disappointment, purely selfish reasons. Bucky Irving, started the season really hot, got injured, and just didn't play for the longest time. And then when he did come back, did nothing. Was getting carries and goal line touchdowns stolen by Tucker, and didn't amount to the hype. And then I think you've got to give a honorable mention to Brock Bowers. Had a fantastic rookie season and was nowhere to be found in the mess that was the Vegas Raiders offense, and they're going to blow that thing up yet again this year.
Lamar Jackson also underwhelmed this year. I know he was injured for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then he took a week off late in the season. But again, for the most part, when he was out there, just didn't have that same kind of MVP level I guess, drive or success that we've been able to see from him this season. Your thoughts on Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, he just really didn't amount to much, did he? The injury didn't help, but even still, when he did come back, showed his usual flashes of brilliance late in that Pittsburgh games past Sunday night, but clearly a disappointment. And again, going back to our theme, do you want to waste a first, second, third round pick on an elite quarterback when you know year over year, they're not guaranteed to produce like they used to. This isn't the good old days where you had like a Peyton Manning, for instance, or a Tom Brady. So, keeping with that theme, I think there's a lot riding on Lamar's future. There's rumblings that the Ravens maybe want to dump him now. He's due a ton of money next year against the cap, and with a new coach coming in, maybe they just blow it up and start from scratch. But should that happen and he end up in a place like Atlanta, for instance, I mean, then he's got some upside again.
That he does, my friend. That he does indeed. But again, it's been an overall fun season to follow here in the NFL. Cannot wait until you and I can cover the Super Bowl whenever that happens. Here in just a few weeks, well, as far as our usual Super Bowl preview is concerned, my friend, but it's always been great here. We've been doing this for many seasons now, and I'm just extremely blessed every time we're able to do this on the air. I know that we've been very busy with our own schedules from time to time, so we've not been able to give them what they want as far as what they say out there on an every week basis. But every time they do come back, they do catch us and do enjoy what we do. But again, I just truly appreciate it, my friend. I hope to do more live shows on next season. It's something I would like to do more of because I love those fantasy football questions on the fly. But any last thoughts, my friend, before we head on out?
Well, first, the feeling's mutual. I think this is what our seventh season in a row of doing this,
I
going
know,
back
can
to
time flies again.
2019. Yeah, scary. We've got kids just getting out or going into college, so pretty scary when you think about it, but it's been a great run. Thank you. I think for me, I feel like fantasy football's changed a lot, and this year was a little difficult with all the injuries and keeping track of things and roster moves. And, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example of what fantasy was in a microcosm to me. At the beginning of the season, everyone was talking about Travion Henderson was going to be the next great running back for the Patriots. He wasn't getting the touches. Ramondre Stevenson was. Was he in the doghouse? I don't know. But by the middle of the season, I said to Dom, is Henderson available in any of our leagues on waivers? He wasn't, but it was just something I thought of. Like, it's a guy you stash, you hold on to him, and sure enough, the guy produced. He had an excellent rookie season, given that he didn't do much at the beginning. I think there's a lot of upside for him going forward. So, moral of the story is there's just so much analysis out there. You get this paralysis by analysis. News is everywhere. Your fantasy apps tell you every little thing that's going on with your players. Hang on to guys sometimes. You never know when they might turn it around. And then you don't have to worry about scraping the waiver wire bottom of the barrel. So whether it's injuries or, guys getting in the doghouse or getting benched or suspended, there's upside out there. And I think Travion Henderson's a perfect example.
I'm here in Las Vegas as in this week is a special week because it's one of our biggest weeks of the year here in Vegas. Consumer Electronics Show is here in town, and we're seeing a lot of as far as new inventions, new products, new themes. But one theme that always seems to be generated in the past few years and growing even more so is the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, being thrown into so many aspects, new aspects of our lives or the products that are being displayed at the Consumer Electronics Show. I wanted to get your thoughts on this real quick. And again, I'll talk more about this hopefully on a Pop Culture Cosmos as far as the show itself here next week. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on the advent of AI encroaching on every aspects of our lives. Could you see it play a factor in the long term here for fantasy football?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm seeing it in my day job. I'm seeing it when I do a Google search. Hearing people talk about it. Will it take all our jobs? I don't know, but you better learn how to use it. Is what I'm seeing and hearing, and I think fantasy football is no exception. Now, will you use AI to set your lineups? I guess people could do that. I wouldn't particularly do it because, like anything else, sports is the real world. It's one thing to predict things, but no one knows what can happen from week to week. Maybe it'd be good to like scour news or trends or things like that a lot more quickly and efficiently. But in terms of using AI to set a lineup for you, I mean, I don't think that could be any better or worse than the proverbial throwing darts against a board or you rolling the dice with your lineup decisions every week.
I see it being used more on the back end, not necessarily from the user aspect, but from the housing company aspect, whether it's Yahoo, DraftKings, ESPN, what have you. I'm sure there was already some advent of that already in that aspect of fantasy football, as far as it maintaining and operating leagues throughout the world, as far as fantasy football is concerned. But I see that being integrated even more when it comes to initiating drafts, managing as far as these leagues, and also maintaining these fantasy football divisions going forward. So I see it becoming more and more prevalent on that end, on the back end, whether it's advertised or not.
That I could definitely see that. And let's not forget, Gerald, too, talking about that back end, there's a way for them to sell it as an add on or another app. They'll do it.
Yeah, can't wait. Another app on my phone. I only got 592. Oh boy, can't wait to add number 593. That'll be a lot of fun in doing so. But it is, of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We're not AI. At least I don't think I am at this point. But who knows? Next year we might be. Just we'll let you know though if we are AI. But again, for now, we're all human, and we're going to go ahead and make sure that we're here for you with some Super Bowl predictions just before the Super Bowl. Looking forward to that episode. But once again, it is Chris Lardieri along with me, Gerald Glassford. I want to thank you so much for watching and listening. If you have any questions for us, once again, isfantasyfootball at yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. Once again, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Looking forward to a great NFL playoff season and looking forward to coming back to give you our Super Bowl thoughts as only we can from right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football.